Hello, everybody. Today, I want to talk about the upcoming quadruple retrograde cycle. This is a pretty unusual event. It happens every couple of years. We'll get this coming along. But this is important because it's going to fall in the US and in the Northern Hemisphere on the Labor Day weekend. So it will be from August 31st until September 5th. When planets are retrograding, they're in the process of kind of rebalancing their energy, and they become emphasized, their energy is emphasized in the chart. So we're going to have 4 planets retrograding or stationing all at once. Now, to put this in perspective, there's only 9 planets. The sun and the moon never retrograde, and Rahu and Ketu always retrograde. So that takes 4 out of the mix. And so we only have 5 planets that can retrograde, and we have 4 of them retrograding. So it'll be a pretty interesting thing to look for. I think the biggest impact is going to be on travel, because what retrograde planets tend to do is they're going along fine, everything's moving in one direction. Suddenly they stop, and then they start to back up. And then they stop again, and then they move forward. So when they're stopped, or we call stationing, or moving backwards, things just don't go as they usually go. So every planet except for Mars that can retrograde will be retrograded. So I think if you're traveling that weekend, as many people are, I would just remind you to plan extra time for your travel, expect delays, expect interruptions, pack snacks and carry a water bottle so you can maintain, your comfort. Make sure that you have, if you take medications, make sure that you have them on you, don't check them, and get plenty of rest before you leave. That's one of the best things you can do for these days, is to make sure that you get good sleep, because then no matter what the planets present to us, we're in a better place to kind of cope with it. So the other thing to consider is that since Mercury is going to be retrograde from August 23rd to September 15th, that means that Gemini and Virgo signs that he rules will not be behaving as normal. So if you have planets there in those signs, they could also be impacted. Jupiter will be retrograding from September 4th through December 31st. Now, this happens every year, so it's not a big deal, but he will be rebalancing for that time. The important thing is, on Jupiter, he stations for 5 days before he actually turns retrograde, and 5 days after. So that brings you'll start to feel his energy change around, August 31st, September 1st. That will already be changing. For Venus, he only retrogrades every 2 years also. So these are the 2 unusual planets that are adding to the mix here. Venus started his retrograde July 22nd and will continue up until September 3rd. So he's finishing his retrograde cycle, but he will continue to retrograde. He'll be stationing only for 2 days after that. So that brings us to September 5th. And then finally, we have the annual Saturn retrograde cycle. This started June 17th, and it will go through November 4th. So those are kind of the players that are in action. And so I talked about Mercury, Gemini, and Virgo are going to be impacted by this. Because of Jupiter's transit, you have to consider Sagittarius and Pisces in your chart. If you have planets there, then that will also you'll be getting, the other thing is, we have to remember, we get different lessons during this time. So I like to approach it that way. You'll be figuring out things in a new way. And for Venus, that means Taurus and Libra will be impacted. And finally, Saturn, of course, would be Capricorn and Aquarius. And that's already in process. The energy, I should say, is most acute when they're stationing. So the day they start, or a couple days before and a couple days after. Once you get into the middle of the cycle, it's not so, things kind of calm down a little bit. But for those 4 days, August 31st to September 5th, it would be really something to watch. So let's go a little bit deeper and let's talk about Mercury. So Mercury is the planet that helps us feel organized and productive. Mercury retrogrades 3 times a year, so it's a very famous retrograde, and people know a lot of it in popular culture. This retrograde will occur in the sign of Leo, and this represents the government and leadership in all areas of life. So Mercury is well placed, there, and he may help facilitate some negotiation among differing parties. I know that's probably aspirational, but it's possible. He is, he can bring things to a conclusion. He can help things move along. However, Mercury can also be duplicitous. It's less likely in Leo because he's happy there. So focus more on the actions he takes than what he says. So the issue may be that the retrograde only lasts for 3 weeks. So it's a short-term fix, and don't expect a long-term change in the behavior. But this is why Mercury, you always have to look at what's actually happening. Jupiter only retrogrades every 2 years, as I said. Jupiter gives us an optimistic outlook, and from the beginning of September until December 31st, he'll be retrograding, and this is all in the sign of Aries. So Jupiter is in a friendly sign there, and Aries indicates our personal power and our vision for our future. This is the chance to align our personal actions with our visions of the world and what we want to leave for future generations. So for Aries, he can bring real blessings to us. Now, there's a confounding factor right now because Rahu, the North Node, is also moving through there. But he'll move out at the end of, I think October or November. I don't have it in front of me. He's still there, but he'll be moving out pretty soon. And that will then leave Jupiter free time to really help Aries out. And this will be a time of really good growth for Aries. And that's not only where your sun is or your ascendant, it's whatever area of life that Aries rules, you can look for growth and benefits there. Venus is the planet that helps us to relax, to let go and have some fun. Venus only retrogrades every 2 years, and this cycle starts in Leo, but Venus will spend most of the time actually back in Cancer. Now, Venus is not really comfortable in Cancer, even though water is associated with both Cancer and Venus. The conflict arises from the fact that Venus is always on the move, chasing worldly experience, and Cancer is a sign of a moksha sign, which seeks a more pure, simple life. So you can see that during this retrograde, you may be struggling between, it could be spending or saving is a really good thing, especially on kind of luxury items. So when Venus goes retrograde like this, especially in the sign of Cancer, really just keep an eye on what you're spending, because Venus likes to do retail therapy a lot. And really, the deeper happiness and contentment comes more from Cancer, helping others, sharing time with friends, having nice food, a clean and nice, simple environment, things like that will be very helpful. And finally, we get to Saturn. Saturn gives us the motivation to work and persevere. This retrograde will be in his own sign of Aquarius. Saturn wants us to pay back all of our karmic debts, and he treats everybody the same, so you don't get any credits, but then he doesn't really particularly treat you worse than anyone else either. It's just that neutrality can feel crushing at times. So in Aquarius, his focus shifts from personal actions towards societal shared karma. He's working to really establish the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And he has whatever he does will have a lasting impact because it's a long retrograde. So you can look for those, for areas of growth, more clarity, and more understanding in the chart. So now take a little extra time, plan if you're traveling or even meeting with friends, or try, trying to do a lot of stuff during that Labor Day weekend time, August 31st to September 5th. Remember to get some relaxation in and see what comes. Be prepared for unexpected events. I hope you'll visit me at billsinclair.com. And if you'd like to know more about how this applies in your life, please book a consultation with me. Thanks a lot and have a good day.